The New York Giants just pulled off the most shocking move of the entire NFL offseason. John Harbaugh, the Super Bowl winning coach who's been the face of the Baltimore Ravens for over a decade and a half, is gone. He's officially the new head coach of the New York Giants on a massive 5-year deal, and the entire league is in absolute disbelief. Nobody saw this coming. The rumors were whispers at best, denied by everyone involved, and then suddenly it's official. Harbaugh is leaving Baltimore, the only franchise he's ever coached for in the NFL, to take over a Giants team that's been stuck in mediocrity for years. This isn't just a coaching change, this is an earthquake that's going to reshape the entire NFC East and possibly the balance of power across the conference. Let's start with the absolute insanity of how this actually happened, because even people inside NFL front offices are stunned by how the Giants pulled this off. John Harbaugh wasn't just any available coach sitting around waiting for offers. He was employed. He was under contract with the Baltimore Ravens. He'd built that franchise into a perennial contender. He'd won a Super Bowl. He'd developed Lamar Jackson into an MVP. He was respected, established, and by all accounts seemed like a lifer in Baltimore. The idea that he would leave, that the Ravens would let him leave, seemed absolutely impossible, and yet here we are. The backstory to this move goes back further than most people realize. According to sources who've been tracking this situation for months, there was growing tension between Harbaugh and the Ravens front office that never made major headlines, but was definitely simmering beneath the surface. It wasn't explosive, it wasn't public, but there were philosophical differences about roster construction, about how much control Harbaugh should have over personnel decisions, about the direction of the team moving forward. Harbaugh is old school in a lot of ways. He wants a physical, run-first offense. He believes in defensive toughness and special teams excellence. But the modern NFL is trending toward more analytics-driven decision-making, more passing game emphasis, and Harbaugh was reportedly feeling like his voice was being heard less and less in those critical conversations. Then there's the Lamar Jackson contract situation that created additional strain. Harbaugh was one of Jackson's biggest advocates, pushing hard for the team to get a deal done, to show their franchise quarterback the respect and commitment he deserved. But the front office took their time, negotiations dragged on, and while a deal eventually got done, the process reportedly frustrated Harbaugh. He felt like the organization wasn't moving with the urgency that a player of Jackson's caliber warranted. That kind of disconnect between coach and front office might seem small from the outside, but it creates cracks that widen over time. Meanwhile, the New York Giants were going through their own crisis. They'd just fired their head coach after another disappointing season, another year of mediocrity, another cycle of raised hopes and crushed dreams. The Giants haven't been relevant in the playoff conversation for years. Their quarterback situation has been a disaster, their offensive line is a mess, their defense has moments of competence followed by complete breakdowns, and most damaging of all, the culture felt broken, like a team that had forgotten how to win and didn't know how to fix it. Ownership knew they needed to make a splash, to bring in someone with credibility and a proven track record, someone who could change the entire organizational mindset. The Giants' ownership, the Mara family, are old-school NFL royalty. They value winning tradition. They remember what it was like when their franchise was dominant, and they're desperate to get back to that level. So when they started their coaching search, they didn't just want another coordinator taking his first head coaching job. They didn't want a retread who'd already failed elsewhere. They wanted an active, successful Super Bowl winning coach. And once they identified John Harbaugh as that target, they went all in with an aggressiveness that shocked everyone. The initial contact happened through back channels, relationships that exist at the highest levels of NFL ownership and management. The Giants reached out to Harbaugh's representation to gauge interest, fully expecting to be told no, that Harbaugh was committed to Baltimore and not interested in exploring other opportunities. But what they heard back surprised them. Harbaugh was willing to listen, not commit, not promise anything, but listen. That small opening was all the Giants needed to start putting together a package that would be impossible to refuse.
What the Giants offered John Harbaugh is absolutely staggering by NFL coaching standards. 5 years, fully guaranteed, and a number that makes him one of the highest-paid coaches in league history. But it wasn't just about the money. The Giants also offered something that Harbaugh had been increasingly lacking in Baltimore: complete control. Personnel decisions, roster construction, coaching staff selection, offensive and defensive philosophy, everything runs through Harbaugh now. He's not just the head coach, he's essentially the football czar with authority over every football-related decision the organization makes. For a coach who felt his voice was being diminished in Baltimore, that level of autonomy was incredibly attractive. The negotiations happened in complete secrecy. The Giants and Harbaugh's camp were incredibly disciplined about not letting information leak. There were no reports, no rumors, no media speculation that this was even a possibility. When word finally broke that Harbaugh was leaving Baltimore for New York, the entire NFL world was stunned. Reporters who cover the league full-time had no idea this was coming. Ravens insiders were blindsided. Giants beat writers were shocked. It was one of the best-kept secrets in recent NFL history, which almost never happens in an era where everything leaks immediately. The Ravens' reaction was immediate and showed just how unprepared they were for this. Baltimore had to scramble to figure out their next move, had to process losing a coach who'd been with the organization since 2008, who'd been the face of their franchise for 16 years. The statement they released was professional, but you could read between the lines. They weren't happy. They felt betrayed in some ways, even though Harbaugh technically didn't do anything wrong. He had contract language that allowed him to pursue other opportunities under certain circumstances, and the Giants' offer triggered those provisions. But losing your Super Bowl-winning head coach to a division rival, well, to a different conference rival, is devastating no matter how it happens. For John Harbaugh personally, this represents a completely new challenge in the final stage of his coaching career. He's 62 years old. He doesn't have forever to rebuild a struggling franchise. But the opportunity to take over the New York Giants, one of the NFL's most iconic franchises, to coach in the biggest media market in the country, to prove he can win without the Ravens' infrastructure he'd relied on for so long, that was too compelling to pass up. This is about legacy. Harbaugh's already won a Super Bowl, already had a Hall of Fame caliber career in Baltimore. But if he can turn around the Giants, if he can bring a championship to New York, he cements himself as one of the all-time great coaches, someone who succeeded in multiple places rather than being defined by one organization. The Giants roster presents both opportunities and massive challenges. On defense, they have some pieces. They have pass rushers who can get after the quarterback. They have a secondary with talent, though it's been inconsistent. Harbaugh's defensive background should help immediately. He knows how to build tough, physical defenses that make offenses uncomfortable. But the offense is a disaster. The quarterback situation is murky at best. The offensive line has been one of the worst in football for years. The skill position players are a mix of aging veterans and unproven young guys. Harbaugh will need to overhaul that entire side of the ball, and that's going to take time and significant resources. The immediate question everyone is asking is what Harbaugh does at quarterback. Does he try to salvage Daniel Jones, the young quarterback the Giants invested in, who's shown flashes but has been maddeningly inconsistent? Does he bring in a veteran as a bridge? Does he use the draft to find his franchise guy? This decision will define his entire tenure in New York. Harbaugh's track record with quarterbacks is interesting. He won a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, developed Lamar Jackson into an MVP, but he's also been criticized at times for conservative offensive approaches that don't maximize quarterback talent. How he handles this situation will tell us a lot about whether he's evolved as a coach or if he's going to try to recreate what worked in Baltimore. The coaching staff Harbaugh assembles will be absolutely critical. Does he bring people from Baltimore, coaches who know his system and philosophy? Does he hire fresh voices, coordinators with new ideas who can complement his strengths? The offensive coordinator hire in particular will be huge. Harbaugh is a defensive-minded coach, so he needs someone on offense who can design creative schemes, develop the quarterback, and put points on the board. If he gets that hire wrong, the entire thing could fall apart before it really starts. The NFC East just got exponentially more interesting with this move. You've got the Cowboys, who are always in contention but can never seem to get over the hump in the playoffs. You've got the Eagles, who've been to a Super Bowl recently and have a talented young roster. You've got Washington, who's been rebuilding but has promise. And now you've got the Giants with John Harbaugh, a proven winner who's going to immediately raise expectations and competitiveness in that division. The twice-a-year games between Harbaugh's Giants and these divisional rivals are going to be must-watch television. From a broader NFL perspective, this move creates a domino effect. The Ravens now have a massive void to fill at head coach. Do they promote from within? Do they go outside the organization? How does losing Harbaugh impact Lamar Jackson's future there? These are huge questions. And other coaches around the league are watching this situation closely because if John Harbaugh can leverage his success into complete organizational control somewhere else, that sets a precedent. Star coaches with options might start demanding more power, more money, more autonomy as the price for their services. The Giants' fan base reaction has been mixed, but trending toward optimism. There's excitement about landing a big-name, accomplished coach. There's a hope that finally, after years of mediocrity, the organization is serious about winning again. But there's also anxiety about whether Harbaugh's success in Baltimore can translate to New York, whether he's the right fit for this specific roster and situation. Giants fans have been burned so many times over the past decade that even landing a Super Bowl-winning coach doesn't guarantee immediate belief. They need to see results on the field before they fully buy in. The pressure on Harbaugh in year one will be enormous. The 5-year contract buys him some time, theoretically, but this is New York. The media scrutiny is relentless. The fan base has no patience left. Ownership wants immediate improvement. Harbaugh will need to show tangible progress quickly, even if they're not contending for a championship right away. That means better record, better culture, better competitiveness in games. If the Giants look like the same old Giants in year one, the questions will start immediately about whether this was a mistake. There's also the personal adjustment for Harbaugh to consider. He's been in Baltimore for 16 years. He knows that city, that organization, those fans intimately. Moving to New York means learning a completely different culture, dealing with a much more intense media environment, adjusting to new ownership and front office dynamics. Some coaches thrive in that kind of pressure cooker. Others wilt under it. Harbaugh's personality suggests he can handle it, but until you actually experience the New York spotlight, you don't really know. The contract details are worth examining because they show just how badly the Giants wanted Harbaugh. 5 years fully guaranteed is almost unheard of for NFL coaches. Most contracts have language that protects teams if they need to make a change, but the Giants gave Harbaugh complete security, essentially saying, "We're committed to you no matter what for 5 full years." That eliminates any uncertainty, gives Harbaugh the stability to build the way he wants, but it also means if this doesn't work out, the Giants are on the hook for a massive financial obligation. It's a huge gamble, but one ownership felt they had to make to land their target. What makes this situation even more fascinating is what it says about the current state of NFL coaching. The best coaches, the proven winners, have leverage like never before. They can demand control, demand money, demand organizational structure that puts them at the center of all football decisions. John Harbaugh leaving an established, successful situation for a rebuilding project shows that when the right opportunity comes along, even coaches who seem settled are willing to make dramatic moves, and teams desperate for credibility and leadership are willing to pay whatever it takes to land those coaches. The Ravens are now in crisis mode, trying to figure out their next move. Losing Harbaugh creates massive instability right as they need to capitalize on Lamar Jackson's prime years. They'll need to hire quickly, convince their franchise quarterback that this won't derail their championship aspirations, and maintain the culture Harbaugh built over 16 seasons. That's an incredibly difficult transition, even for a well-run organization. And if they mess it up, Baltimore could go from perennial contender to mediocre team very quickly. For the NFC as a whole, adding John Harbaugh to the Giants shifts the competitive balance. He's going to make New York tougher, more physical, harder to play against. Teams that used to circle Giants games as likely wins will now have to prepare differently. Harbaugh's presence elevates the entire franchise, which creates ripple effects throughout the conference. And if he can turn this around quickly, if the Giants become playoff contenders in year 2 or 3, it changes the entire NFC playoff picture.
The draft is going to be huge for Harbaugh and the Giants. They need to hit on their picks, need to find impact players who can contribute immediately. Harbaugh has a track record of developing talent, of getting the most out of players, but he needs the front office to give him the right pieces to work with. That relationship between Harbaugh and the Giants' general manager will be critical. They need to be aligned on evaluation, on philosophy, on what kind of players fit the vision. If there's conflict there, this whole thing could unravel. Free agency will also be a major test. The Giants have cap space, and Harbaugh's presence makes them a more attractive destination for veteran players who want to win. Can they land impact free agents who buy into the vision? Or will players still see the Giants as a dysfunctional organization, despite the coaching change? The next few months will answer a lot of questions about whether this hire truly changes perceptions around the league, or if it's just another attempt by the Giants to fix problems that run deeper than coaching. The timeline for success is also worth considering. Harbaugh has 5 years, but realistically, he probably needs to show meaningful progress within 2 or 3 seasons to keep everyone on board. That means potential playoff appearance by year 2 or 3, competitive division race, clear upward trajectory. If the Giants are still losing 10-plus games a year in seasons 2 and 3, even Harbaugh's credibility will start to take hits. The clock is ticking from day one. What's interesting is how this move impacts Harbaugh's Hall of Fame legacy. He was already going to be a strong candidate based on his Baltimore success. But if he can turn around the Giants, especially if he can win another Super Bowl with a different franchise, he goes from strong candidate to absolute lock. That's the ultimate motivation for a coach at this stage of his career. The money is great, the control is great, but legacy is what drives these guys at the highest levels. The Giants' division rivals are watching this situation very closely. Dallas, Philadelphia, and Washington all know that New York just got significantly more dangerous. Harbaugh isn't some unproven coordinator they can exploit. He's a master tactician who's going to have his team prepared, disciplined, and tough. The division just got harder for everyone, and that creates urgency for those other teams to keep improving or risk falling behind. As this story continues to develop, as Harbaugh starts building his staff and evaluating the roster, as the Giants head into free agency and the draft with their new coach in place, the entire NFL world will be watching. This is the biggest coaching move of the offseason, a seismic shift that nobody saw coming and that changes the landscape of the entire league. John Harbaugh leaving Baltimore for New York is the kind of blockbuster that defines an era, and the next chapter of both franchises' stories starts right now. The New York Giants shocked the NFL world by landing John Harbaugh on a historic 5-year, fully guaranteed contract, pulling him away from the Baltimore Ravens after 16 successful seasons. This isn't just a coaching change, it's a complete organizational shift that gives the Giants credibility, direction, and championship pedigree they've desperately needed. Harbaugh leaves behind the only NFL franchise he's ever coached to take on one of the league's biggest rebuilding challenges in the sport's most intense media market. Whether this gamble pays off with playoff success and Super Bowl contention or becomes another failed Giants experiment won't be known for years. But one thing is certain, the balance of power in the NFC East and across the entire conference just shifted. The Harbaugh era in New York begins now. This video is based on reports, insider information, and ongoing developments. Stay tuned for updates as this historic coaching move continues to unfold.